anarchy in America. What started out as peaceful protests against the brutal killing of George Floyd quickly degenerated into violent riots. 5 months later, the country is in far worse turmoil. Why? And what will it take to restore law and order to America? Here's Heather Sells with that report.
Portland, Seattle, Kenosha, New York, cities large and small have been burned, looted, and parts of them destroyed. What started as peaceful demonstrations have turned increasingly violent and destructive. In recent weeks, counter-protesters, some of them armed, have been showing up at the demonstrations to confront the unrest, adding to the tension and, in some cases, to the violence. New polling data shows that 68% of Americans say they would feel unsafe if they lived in a large city. As cities and states fail to quell the violence, the federal government is stepping in, not with more boots on the ground, but by threatening to withhold money to those cities. The DOJ has named Portland, Seattle, and New York City as jurisdictions where local governments are permitting anarchy, violence, and destruction. The designation could result in the loss of federal funds. Attorney General William Barr said we cannot allow federal tax dollars to be wasted when the safety of the citizenry hangs in the balance. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Well, joining us now is former United States Attorney General John Ashcroft, who is also a distinguished professor in the Schools of Law and Government at Regent University. And General Ashcroft, a dear, dear friend of many years, is welcome to the 700 Club. Let me ask you something. The rioting continues in cities all across America, and why can't the federal government move in with National Guard troops to stop it?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that there is legal authority. The Insurrection Act of 1807, signed by Thomas Jefferson, and in which he used the act then to quell a lack of lawlessness in the northeast part of the United States. It's been used by president after president throughout our history. Maybe U.S. Grant made the most dramatic use of it in the 1870s when he sent 1,000 troops into South Carolina to clean out the Ku Klux Klan in that setting and restore the rights of citizens to peaceable lives. So, and of course, we remember during our lifetimes the deployment by Eisenhower and Kennedy related to civil rights and integration in Arkansas and Louisiana. And the language that was expressed in designating the cities is language which is very similar to amended language that has appeared in the Insurrection Act, originally from 1807, but amended on a number of previous occasions, subsequent occasions, so that there is, I think, a generally conceded understanding that the president, if it's necessary to sustain the equal protection of the laws for American citizens and their rights are being violated, he has the capacity to do what he has refrained from doing to this point.
Why do you think he's taking that approach? He's going to withhold money from some of these states. Don't you think it's time to move in with some more force?
Well, I'm not in a position to try. I don't know all the facts and all the considerations of the president. I do know that he has a high level of respect for federalism. You'll note that the way he's handled the COVID crisis has been to expect and call upon state officials and local officials to act responsibly in pursuit of the rights and safety and security of their citizens. And he also, in his newest Supreme Court appointment, is reflecting a high degree of respect for federalism, which I believe she has championed very effectively, both as a law professor and as a member of the court system. So it may well be his respect for and his expectation that people, in one respect, get what they vote for, and the people they vote for are the people who are determining policy. On the other hand, you have this strong demand or a right of expectation on the part of the American people to say we deserve to be safe in our persons and property. And we've seen a wanton destruction of property and a wanton intimidation of people all across the country.
John, what about this Supreme Court pick? The Democrats are saying, well, he shouldn't have done that during an election time. Here we've got a distinguished candidate for the Supreme Court. There's no reason, is it, why Trump could go forward and appoint somebody?
Yeah, last I checked, the president's elected for a full 4 years. I prefer he not say, as he did in the debate last night, it's my right to do this. I prefer that he say, it's my duty to do this. I have a responsibility to the American people when there's a vacancy on the Supreme Court of the United States, understanding the value and importance of the Supreme Court, to fill that vacancy rather than to immobilize or, in some measure, paralyze the court by having it partially staffed. And it's a very responsible thing for him to have considered in advance what would happen when a vacancy occurred. I've been part of this kind of process before myself, and to be prepared to make a nomination so that the duties of the Supreme Court can be sustained and undertaken by a court that is fully staffed. And it confounds me to think that a president should say, well, I was elected for 4 years, but in the middle of my third or fourth year, because of politics, I'm going to withdraw myself from my duty. He shouldn't withdraw, he should engage. And the existence of a political climate shouldn't intimidate him, and certainly doesn't intimidate him. He's not subject to intimidation, but his opposition has generated a political climate that has been at nuclear levels since the beginning of his time in office. And I'm sure they would have said, had there been an earlier vacancy in the court, you should never make an appointment. You should wait till we're in power. Well, guess what? The American people have elected a president for the purpose of making the appointment, and I think he should move forward. And I'm delighted that he has chosen so well.
Well, I'm glad. One last question. We've done a series on a nation of criminals. We have more people incarcerated than any other nation on the face of the earth. We have so many crimes, so many offenses. They say anybody over 18 is going to break the law if he hardly knows what to do. Is there some way we can clean up that judicial system to make our criminal justice system fair?
Well, I'm not convinced that the criminal justice system is unfair. I think if you want to make crime rare, you make it costly. People don't want to take chances. If you want to make crime more prevalent, you say, well, we don't really care very much if you commit crimes, and we won't do anything serious. I think it's well worth looking at our system to see if we are incarcerating people unnecessarily. But if things are serious criminal activities, I'm not in favor of the no bail system, where someone is charged with a crime and they're just told, well, go out and we'll wait and try you in a couple of years, and you can see how many more things you get away with. Particularly in settings of our big cities where the conviction rate for crimes actually committed, or the clearance rate, is so low. In some of our large cities, only half of the murders ever get prosecuted at all. And let alone some of those, obviously, are adjudicated innocent. So I'm not in favor of just emptying the prisons. When I was Attorney General, there were times when the New York Times would write an article saying crime rates low despite high prison population. Well, I would say, yeah, that's the reason the crime rate is low. We've got a lot of the bad people in prison. So I'm in favor of incarcerating people who are committing crimes. Now, if we've proliferated what's criminal to the place where we're putting people in prison who are really not doing things that are injurious to the society, fine. But if you're injuring the social order, if you're threatening the safety and security of the American people, I think there ought to be serious consequences. Maybe we don't have as long as sentences. It might be better if we got people there more quickly, and maybe they would understand that they didn't have such a chance of escaping. So the length of sentences might be something to be considered, and all of these considerations need to be put in balance. But the safety and security of the American people is very important. And if people are going to injure others, I think they ought to be placed in a setting where they might be able to injure each other, but they don't injure law-abiding citizens.
Great word. Listen, we appreciate your brilliance. We thank you so much for serving at Regent, a distinguished professor, and we're honored to have you with us. John Ashcroft, a dear friend of many, many years. So thank you so much for being with us today.
May God continue to bless you. I remember nearly 50 years ago, my first opportunity to be with you on the 700 Club. I guess it was 40-some.
Yeah, well,
I'm grateful for the opportunity to share in shaping the future by teaching at Regent University. Our law school is exemplary. It's a spectacular place.